I think there's one theme to everything we were talking about, beginning with Bert and Greg and George. One way to phrase it in one word would be just alternative. Alternative monetization, alternative everything. Everything is new. It's being reinvented very, very quickly. And we kind of notice that the pace of innovation is picking up. Nothing is the way it used to be done. In Bert's field, marketing is being reinvented every day, and people kind of lose their way. The way that it used to be done no longer works. TV and everything else. Greg, you were talking about how companies themselves try to think of how to monetize their services in a different way. So, in that vein, if we were to think about what's big, what is the next big thing, if there's entrepreneurs who are thinking about focusing their efforts in a particular area of a business, where in that, this is a question for everybody, in that value chain of what's being introduced, both from the marketing perspective of new companies seeking to communicate with customers in new ways, and for companies who are trying to monetize their services in new ways, or sometimes on the other end of the marketing value chain, is there anything that you anticipate where sort of are the biggest gaps where you would focus your efforts now to kind of complete that loop, both short term, maybe in the next couple of years, and then maybe longer term? That's a tougher question. But if someone's working on a really big idea, it'll probably take some time, so they should start in the right place. So go ahead, whoever wants to take that first.
I'll start it off. We talked about advertising with Greg's speech, and in advertising models, they're getting studied quite a bit. Obviously, Google is trading at a huge valuation, and much of corporate America is trying to understand how to monetize data. Having spent some time in Silicon Valley recently, the next wave of invested companies from the VC world are companies that enable transactions. So transactions, it is a gray area between how you got to that point in terms of either promoting the company through an ad-based source or promoting an actual transaction to occur. But if you're able to help a second company transact as opposed to just promote, that's what's evidently getting invested quite heavily out in Silicon Valley. Another comment on Silicon Valley is you can't get a hotel there right now. So to the lab's perspective, I was grinning because literally the last 2 times I've been there, I've had to stay about 30 miles away. You can't get a hotel. But every company, it seems like under the sun, Fortune 500, global technology, they all want presence in Silicon Valley. Just like if you're a retailer, a high-end retailer, you've got to be on Fifth Avenue in New York. So it's a not just a trend, it seems to be a tidal wave of you got to have presence in the valley. We'll see how that plays out.
Sure. I think one of the hottest areas to focus on, and it aligns a little bit with the transaction concept, is decision making. And so what I find is we'll take health as an example in the presentation. You have many different kind of health options to track your health, to monitor your health, to do reps, but it doesn't materially impact in one, a tremendous amount of customer value, or two, a decision or change in customer lifestyle for the most part. And so what I think is, as you start wherever kind of you're focusing, what I would imagine is there's a tremendous amount of digital exhaust being put out based on the products and services that you're delivering, right? The ability to take that, filter through, and enable decision making on top of that, I think, is the next big wave and trend, because the solutions are out there. They just haven't found the value yet for what people are looking for. And so focusing on that, being able to deliver that value to change outcomes or behaviors, I think is the next big kind of wave in collecting data, analyzing data, and acting on data.
So one thing, is it this one? Maybe it is. One thing that I just saw, I ran a panel, it was for CMOs and CIOs in Napa Valley, and I had a panelist, and she came up to me beforehand, and we were talking. I said, well, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and she goes, oh yeah, well, she'll be mine in 1 year. And I go, she'll be yours in 1 year. She's the CEO, 25 years old, of a little company called Style Hall, and it's all about the style lifestyle. So it's makeup, it's clothing, it's jewelry, it's everything. And you think, well, who's this little company? This little company has now had over 9 billion views of their videos, with a B. And when I had her on stage, she was just over 8 billion. And she has the female audience from age 10 to about late 20s, pretty much locked and loaded. And she actually came out of, she actually knew the guys at Machinima. Have you heard of Machinima, some of you? That's the boys' side of it. That's the gaming world. It's all about broadcasting games, right? People playing Xbox 360 games, and they're guys who are actually, just like a sporting event, saying, oh yeah, he's shooting that guy, he's shooting that guy. Last Christmas, I know it's kind of weird, but last holiday season, they had more male views between the ages of 10 and 25 than all of TV combined. All of TV combined. So if you want to reach a young male audience, you probably got to talk to them at least as a starting point. You want to reach a young female audience, you got to talk to Stephanie, who's the CEO of Style Hall, because Time Warner is and Comcast is, and they're trying to figure out how the heck these two companies have grabbed such a huge presence with these audiences, because these are the next buyers, right? When they graduate from college or they graduate from high school and they start buying things, how do you reach them? How do you advertise to somebody who isn't even there? They don't watch TV. They're not there. So I think that's the thing that, as a marketer, as a business, you got to figure out now, and you got to start understanding this, because they've adopted technology and they've adopted in a whole new way that we don't all understand yet, and what that's going to evolve into is still happening. And I think next year is going to be a big year for that for a lot of marketers. I had a bank come to an agency partner I talked to actually just yesterday, and they said in June they stopped all TV advertising. They said it didn't work anymore for them, for their bank. So they completely switched over to something different because it wasn't moving the needle at all for them. So that was interesting.
Great. Now, segue 180, sort of what enables alternative monetization and this innovation in the marketing space altogether is customer data. However, the flip side of it is we would only share the customers our data if we know it's reasonably secure. We recently found out that it may not be so as we had expected before. So Eric Schmidt comes out several days ago and says that by 2020, 90% of all of our data will be encrypted, and that's how we will solve this problem. Now, that in itself creates its own problems. I think it prevents some of the alternative monetization models, business models that were envisioned by people 2 years ago. So probably someone has stopped in their speed right now and kind of having to rethink their business plan. And so it's kind of a broad question, so if you can comment on encryption in general and what it means for business models for those that exist today, as well as if that creates in itself that direction of privacy and protection of customer data and how it's restricted, how it affects the ecosystem, and any developments that we can invest in or someone can create that play along that line of encryption, data protection, but really enabling the value of data at the same time.
Sure. So personal opinion, obviously, is we're all kind of animal. Most of us prefer taking an aspirin rather than a vitamin every single day. So so there's either two things that are going to cause this, I think, is one, government regulation, which you're seeing a lot in Europe. So Europe heavily regulates and is even more heavily regulating the amount of customer information that can be collected and how it's used. Or I think you'll see kind of a privacy event happen in a non-regulated area that will either cause the government or somebody else to get involved. Because you have companies today like Reputation.com, Personal.com, other things which allow you as a consumer to hit, and you have do not track mechanisms on all of your browsers. You have ad choices that are enabled and being rolled out over the next year, which will allow you to opt in to significantly reduce the amount of information that's being collected about you and used about you on the internet, but also allow you to monetize that and not allow kind of other companies to monetize it, but you to monetize it through them. But I don't, in focus groups, surveys, and other things, especially here in North America, I haven't seen a big push for people to really, unless you're an older generation, the younger generation seems to not care about it much at all, and the middle generation just kind of isn't really sure. So I think it's going to be critically important, but TBD on what it is that allows it to happen. States and drives it, whether it be government regulation or whether it be kind of an event or just kind of an industry consortium, because I think people are happy with the way it's going right now, especially given the profit margins and the number of people who control the data. So I'm not sure, and they're amassing more of it. And companies like Blue Kava and Blue Kai and others and Rapleaf are getting more of this, and they're not really paying that much for it either, right? So the model is not really taxed. That's what I'm saying. I think it'll take an event to tax it, either a new disruptive innovation or an event.
It is incredible how much data is out there, and you can start seeing some of the false steps. For example, I was planning a dinner in Las Vegas for one of our team meetings, and I was on TripAdvisor, this is a couple years ago, and I did a search on a restaurant, and at the bottom of TripAdvisor it said, look who in your network has recently been to Vegas. And it had 20 pictures, I think connected with my Facebook somehow. I thought, well, I don't know if they want me to know that they've been to Vegas recently. Maybe they were doing something I shouldn't know. So there might be some event, as you say. It is incredible all the data that's out there. For anyone who's had the misfortune of being arrested, your mugshot's out there. People are trying to now take those off the internet. They pay Reputation.com a lot of money, but they don't even warrant that they can get it off the internet. And they have pretty aggressive monetization models, as I understand. So it doesn't seem that solvable, and then of course you've got the demographics coming behind, which say, hey, my life is fully out there. So I think I've gone from it's probably solvable and it'll sort of moderate to I wonder if it's even truly solvable.
I'm going to just bring up a counterpoint on this, and I think we're seeing it with like a company like Snapchat. There is a youth rebellion against all this going on, and they don't know how to articulate it, but they are rebelling, and they're rebelling for a lot of reasons. One is, and most of you, if you have kids, would know this, that there's a lot of anti-bullying going on in schools now. And where was a lot of that bullying going on? It was going on Facebook, it was going on MySpace before that, it was going on in the digital world on these social networks. And so kids now are really wary of those social networks because of that. The next thing that happens is they get to high school, and then, I don't know if you've seen it recently, well, colleges are starting to look at kids' Twitter streams and their Facebook pages to determine if they should be accepted to their university. So guess what the kids are being told? Don't put anything out there that you wouldn't want like a college admissions person to see. And then when they get to college, what are they being told? Don't put anything out there that you wouldn't want someone who's going to hire you to see. So what's happening? They're becoming more private because through each step along the path, they're being told, don't have a picture of you being drunk. Don't have a picture of you sexting, with a partner. And so that's why when you see Snapchat and being offered $3 billion for a company that makes no money whatsoever, and who knows when they will, but it's all about the ephemeral nature of that service. And that's a social network where things don't stick around. And if somebody does capture an image, you're told they captured it, so now all the trust is gone. So it's really interesting. So this doesn't get to the encryption issue as much as it gets to the fact that we have a whole generation of people coming up who have a different perspective on this. Not so much they're much more sharing in some ways, but in other ways they're very protective, and because they're being raised to be more protective. So I think we have to keep an eye on that too as we go through this.
Now, it was actually a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek question. I think that may be the hidden next big thing. We don't know what it is yet. We see the trends, right? We see that the market is ready. There's this latent discontent that youth are only now expressing. So maybe somewhere there isn't the next billion when you're not making any money yet, but someone else is willing to pay that for that idea.